Hi, I'm Mark Miklich, Technical Product Manager for Small Character Technologies here at Squid Ink. In today's video, we are going to discuss message creation, editing, and management in our SQ laser systems. Okay, since we're just working on message creation and editing and management in this video, one thing I'll make note of really quick is to set up messages, all we need to be able to do is turn the system on. We don't need to be utilizing the safety interlock or anything like that yet, since we're not going to be marking, we're just building our templates. So all we really need is the system to be set up, have the keys so we can turn the laser on. We're going to go ahead and do that now, and then we'll jump right into message creation. Okay, so we just have the system set up. All we need is a key to power the system on. So we're going to slide the key into the key slot here, turn it clockwise, that will power the laser on. Okay, there'll be a brief boot up period here, and it's going to take us right to our home screen where we can start making our messages. Okay, one thing we'll see here during boot up is it gives you a little pop-up here letting you know that the system, when you first commission it, first time you turn it on, there's a slight warm-up period. You can actually go ahead and just click OK here. And now we're to our home screen, if you will. Okay, so this is where we're going to do all of our message creation and editing, modifying our characters or logos, whatever it might be. So we're really going to be using a lot of these different icons here during this process to get set up properly. Now you'll see there's already a generic message programmed in here. We're not going to use this. We're going to start from scratch. So we're going to build a brand new template, go through all the different features available to you. Okay, so again, the first thing we're going to do is start with a clean slate. Okay, we're going to open up a brand new template. So if we want to do that, you'll see top left-hand corner of all these options is just a blank sheet of paper that says new underneath it. If we click that, you'll see it completely clears out our display. All right, so the first thing we're going to work with is just generic alphanumeric text. Okay, so that option is right here, our text option. And when we click on that, you'll see we have our text field, and we'll go over what a few of these icons mean. Now you're going to see a lot of different options as we get into this. We're going to stick to more of the basic settings to get you set up, okay? So first thing we'll look at here is the actual content. This is what is ultimately going to be input into our text field on the home screen. So this is what we're going to be typing into. So it just starts with generic text. We're going to clear that out and type in the data that we actually want. So you'll see we have a keyboard here on the bottom of the display. If we want to clear this text out, we'll just hit backspace. Okay, now we can type in whatever we want. You'll see everything is lowercase right now. Our caps lock is right here. Okay, and again we can type in whatever we want. If we want to put in numbers, you'll see we do have number option here. And then if we do need characters, we have that as well. Okay, so here's all the characters you normally see, or symbols you would see on a normal keyboard. To get back to just letters, bottom left-hand corner. Okay, so really easy to input the data that we need. You'll see we have a few options here beneath our content. Pen number, to kind of boil this down to a real basic overview. A pen is something we can set up in our programming that will dictate our power output, how fast we're drawing, things of that nature. We're actually going to cover that in a different video as far as how you set up a pen, but you can apply different pen numbers to this text. So we have up to 10 pens available. Each pen could operate at a different power output, draw speed, again, things of that nature. So we could actually assign specific pens to specific content in our message, each one that could be drawing, again, at a different power output, speed, etc. Underneath that, we have object number. This is the very first item or object we are inputting into our template or message, so that's object 0. If we put in another text field after that, it would be object 1. Let's say we put in a date stamp after that, that would be object 2, etc. Okay? After that, we have X and Y coordinates. That just tells you where this is going to land on our display here. So dead center of this crosshair would be X0 and Y0. So you can actually manipulate this if you want, so you kind of know where your data is going to end up on the display. I'm not going to touch it. You'll see that when we input each element, they're going to kind of stack up right on top of each other in a nice format. After that, we have rotation angle. That would actually angle our text however we want it. The entire text field. So let's say we want this straight up and down. Let's say we want it 90 degrees. We can actually type in 90 and it would arrange our text as kind of a tower, if you will. After that, we have row space. Row space is, if you're familiar with kerning, for example, what this is it's actually adjusting the space between individual letter forms in proportional fonts. So it's not the same thing as just a character gap. That's a little bit more specific to the font type. To be honest with you, I really don't use this very often. We'll use character gap for character spacing. It's a little bit easier. But you do have this option available to you. The next big thing we're going to work with here is our actual text setup relative to font, character size, things of that nature. So that's all going to be in this icon right here, or this button. So we're going to click on that. You see we have a lot of options available. First is our font height and width. You'll notice we have a checkbox next to each. If we only have the checkbox next to font height selected, it will auto scale your width. Most of the time I'd recommend just leaving that as this generic setup here. It'll make sure your characters look nice or proportionate. So you'll see if we adjust our height, that width is automatically adjusting with it. Okay, you'll see that this is in millimeters. Okay, so obviously, 3 or 4 millimeter text isn't very large, but that's going to be fairly commonly used for a lot of products, chipboard boxes, things of that nature. That's usually the size roughly you're going to see. After that, after our height and width selection, we have a font selection. If you click this drop down, you're going to see a lot of different options. I'm going to change it to Laser Font 1, for example. This is a little bit of just trial and error to see what you like best or what appearance you prefer. Okay. The next drop down is only specific to our customers in Asia. Okay, this is for Chinese fonts, for example. So not relevant for any of our customers in North and South America, for example. After that, we have character fill. This is specific to bold fonts only. So we'll revisit this. We're going to go ahead and put in just a standard font first. We'll come back in and show you how to change this to a bold font and how we could fill in those bold characters. Okay. A couple of the options after that are also specific to bold fonts, so we're going to kind of skip over that for now, come back to it. After that, we have barcode. You'll see there's a checkbox here. The data that we typed in on the previous page, if you want that to actually be the input data for a barcode, so if you want this to end up being a barcode, we could check this box, and you'll see we'll get a lot of different options for barcodes. Again, we're going to kind of skim over that for now. We will revisit that after we work on our just generic text first. After that, we have oblique angle. This actually lets us basically change our text into italics. Okay, so if you increase or decrease this value, you can go negative. Positive will skew our text to the right, negative will move it to the left. Okay. Arc permutation, that will actually generate an arc for our text. Okay, so think of it as a rainbow, basically. Positive will make a rainbow, let's say. Negative will make it into more of a U shape. Okay, and we'll show you how that looks. So if you've got let's say the bottom of a can, for example, and you actually want your text to kind of wrap with the circumference of that can, you can actually do that. We can make our text kind of wrap around almost to a full circle if need be. So that's what our arc permutation function is here. After that, we have character gap. That's just a really basic space in between each character. That is in millimeters. Default is 0. We can manipulate that however we want. So if you're not happy with the spacing between each individual letter or number, we could increase this and increase that gap. Okay, if we're happy with how this is set up, we're going to go ahead and click our little checkbox here. That's going to take us back to that content field. We're going to click the checkbox again, and that will input that data into our display. Okay? So you can see now we've got our Squid Ink 1, 2, 3 in our template. One thing you'll notice is we've got this big purple box outlining the whole thing. That's basically your available marking area, and this is in a static mode. Okay, if we were running a dynamic product or a product that's moving, horizontal is actually basically unlimited. Okay, vertical, there is a limitation. This is using our standard 90 by 90 millimeter lens, so this box actually represents that 90 by 90 millimeter marking field that we have available to us. So we can really have this just about anywhere in this field. I recommend starting off just keep it centered here. Okay, if you're not happy with the placement of your text, the size, appearance, anything like that, if we want to edit this text field, now that it's been placed in our template, we're going to click this select option, and then if we double click on that text, it's going to open up that exact same text field. Okay, so now again, if placement is a concern, we'll kind of look at the bottom left hand corner of this pop-up. We've got these directional arrows here. You'll notice that's moving our data around in our template. Okay, so we can position it wherever we want. We do have this plus and minus keys here. That actually controls the jump, okay, or how quickly we're moving this text around. If we really want to move this in large jumps, we can click plus a few times. You'll see that it really speeds up that process. If we need to fine-tune the location of our text, we can hit the minus key a few times, and you'll see it's a very fine adjustment. Okay, if we want to completely remove this text altogether, if we just decide we want to delete this field, the red X right here is our delete function. The last key here actually breaks up our text into individual elements. What this would do is separate every single letter into its own individual element. I do not recommend using this for text. It really doesn't help us out at all. This is more useful when we get to items like logos, if we need to separate individual logo elements. Okay, but just to explain what that is, why that's there. Okay, you'll see again we can also access our font setup, size, things of that nature again here. So we're going to go back in this field. We'll look at a couple of those options we discussed previously. For example, if we want to change our oblique angle, so this is for if we want to make more of an italicized text, we can type in a value here, click our check boxes, and you'll see how that impacts our text. Okay, we'll set that back to 0. That arc permutation we were talking about, I'll show you what that does. Okay, so you'll see I've typed in 90 here. Again, this is just an example. It's something, again, a little bit of trial and error to get it to the arc that you'd like. Once you've got your value typed in, again, hit your 2 check boxes, and you'll see now our entire text field is starting to generate a little bit of an arc to it. So again, we could increase this all the way to the point that it's almost forming a circle, if you will. Okay, it's kind of a neat feature. So we'll go back in and disable that. We'll set our arc back to 0. Okay, so if we set our arc permutation back to 0, again, click our 2 check boxes. That'll straighten our text back out. Okay, our next option here again is character gap. And again, this is just going to generate space in between each individual character. This is in millimeters, so you'll see if we go to 1 millimeter spacing, for example, hit our 2 checks here, spaces out our characters quite a bit. Okay, and our character gap, naturally, when we return that to 0, it'll go back to the generic spacing that we started with. Okay, another option we had discussed previously is our character fill, and again, that is specific to bold fonts only. So if we want to switch to a bold font, we'll select our font drop down here. One thing to be mindful of, if we go with a bold font, you're asking a lot more of the system, right? It's a lot more for the laser to draw, if you will. So one thing to be aware of is that it's likely going to decrease your speed capabilities. So if you're running on a really high speed line, typically we would avoid bold fonts, and especially bold fonts with character fill. Okay, the system has to go and fill in that entire font or character set. So just be aware of that. If you go to bold fonts, it will limit your speed capabilities. That being said, I'll show you how to locate bold fonts. Anything with a BD at the end of it is going to represent bold. So if we scroll down, for example, you'll see ROMBD, that's Roman bold, just abbreviated. So if we click on that, what we're going to end up with is a bold font. So before I fill these characters in, again, we're going to click our check boxes here. You'll see now we have a bold font. Okay. Now it's a little tough to see here since we're kind of zoomed out on the whole display. If we want to get a better look at this text, you'll see we do have zoom functions here. We'll zoom in and you'll see that's actually a nice clean bold font. We can still select our text here even when we're zoomed in. It'll take us back to our editor. Okay, so now we'll look at character fill for this bold font. Right now it's set to null, which means no fill. Okay, so we've got 3 options here. First is transverse. That's actually going to put horizontal lines through our text. So horizontal lines inside these bold characters to fill them in. And we've got vertical and we've got diagonal. Okay, that's just the orientation of the fill lines in the characters. So let's go to diagonal, for example. You'll see we can control the angle of that diagonal fill or those diagonal fill lines. We're just going to leave it at 45, again, just to give you guys an example. And then we can control the spacing of those lines inside the characters. So we'll leave it at 0.5 millimeter for now. We'll check out and you'll see how this fills in the characters. So we'll hit our check boxes and you'll see now we've got these diagonal lines inside each character. Okay, if we really want to bold these up, if we really want to fill them in, again, we probably have a very slow moving product at this point if we're going to do that. We're just going to select our text again. And if we decrease that spacing, let's say down to 0.1 millimeter, you'll see now we really fill those characters in. Okay, and again, I can't stress enough, if we fill to this extent, if we use bold fonts, this will limit your speed capabilities. Just be aware of that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set our text back to just that generic laser font, or laser 1 font, I'm sorry. So we're going to get rid of our character fill here, and then we're going to scroll back up to our laser font 1, click check, and you'll see we're back to that normal font. Now, one other option I'll show you here. You may have noticed when we're in our editor here, a quick back out is just this arrow right next to the check box here. So that'll quick take us out of the editor. That's all that's for. Okay, so we've got our first piece of just static or generic alphanumeric text put into our template. You'll notice I'm still zoomed in here on our text. If you need to go back or you want to go back to just that normal view that showed the entire template, right underneath our zoom options we have normal. That'll take you right back to that main display. So if you ever get lost in the editor, if you're putting in a bunch of data all over the place and you're just not quite sure where you're at, just remember normal is your friend. That'll take you right back again to the full display. After our static or generic alphanumeric text, we're going to move on to date stamp, okay? So we're going to move along here to our date option. Okay, so if we click on that, we're going to get our date field pop up here, okay? You're going to see a lot of familiar options here now. You'll see our content field here. That's going to show the date format that we ultimately select. You'll see the pen selection. Again, we briefly discussed that with our text field. We will have a separate video that really goes into detail, again, on how to set up individual pens. But you can select a pen here to apply to this specific date field if needed. After that, we've got our format selection. We will visit that here very soon. After that, we've got our same options that we had with our just standard text field. So we've got our object number that this will ultimately end up being, our X and Y locations. Then after that, we've got expiration days. So you'll see we can set a day offset for this date field. And then we have that same rotation option that we had with standard text. So we can rotate this if needed. All right, the big thing here first, of course, is going to be our format. So you'll see there are a lot of options here. We're going to go for just a standard month, day, year format. So you'll see if we scroll through, we're going to scroll way up here. We've got month, day, year. If you click on a format, you'll see that the content automatically updates to show you how that's going to appear. So it's really nice. If that's not what you want to see, we can go back to our format selection and select a different one. Okay? Again, this is dynamic. It's going to update on its own from here on out, depending on how we set it up. Okay? So right now we're just going to be printing the current day's date. If we want this to be an expiration date, for example, we'll go back down, revisit this expiration days. So if we want this to be a product that's showing a 90-day expiration, type in 90, click our checkbox, and you'll see now that we've input that data into the display or into our template. You'll see it's showing 90 days out. Again, that's dynamic. It's going to automatically update itself every single day. If we need to edit our date field at any time, again, it's the same select option that we used for our standard text. We click on our date, takes us right back in. Okay? So once we've got our format selected, whether or not we're using expiration days, if we've got that set up, you'll see we've got the same options here as far as positioning our date. Okay, so if we want to get this a little bit closer, if we want to shrink that inner line between our two elements, we can do that. After that, we've got the same font options that we had with standard text as well. Now you'll notice it actually carried over the font I had selected for my alphanumeric text, which is kind of nice. Typically you're going to be using, the same font for just about everything in most scenarios. If we did want to change it, naturally, if we want to make this bigger, if we want to make it bold, whatever we want to do, we can set that all up here. Okay, the next option we're going to focus on here is a timestamp. Okay, fairly commonly used. So we'll click on time. Again, this is all going to start looking really familiar. We've got our content here. So that's how it's actually going to display in our template. We've got that pen number selection. We've got our time format. Okay, so right now we're showing hours, minutes, and seconds. You'll see if we click this drop down, we've got a lot of different options. We'll just leave it at the current selected format. We've got our object number, rotation, options, and our XY coordinates. Okay, we also have the exact same font setup options we have with everything else. So if you do need to customize this one particular field, you can do that. But if we're happy with this data, just click our checkboxes. You'll see it throws it right into our template. Next option we're going to focus on is a counter, and that shows up on our display here, right here. It abbreviated as sequential number or numbering. Again, right under our date and time options. So if we click on that, this is our counter setup. Okay, so again, very familiar here on the left-hand side of the display, our current content, pen number selection. After that, we've got quite a few counter-specific options. Step mode, we've got a lot of different counter options here. Most common is going to be decimal, but you'll see there are several custom options for counters. If you're curious as to what some of these are, I highly recommend you review our user guide for the laser. It will explain in detail what each of these options are. Again, most common is just going to be decimal. Okay, so just numbers that we're using. Object number, rotation angle, same functions as all of our other data. We've got our coordinate setup as well. After that, we've got our step option. That's how do you want this to increment? Do you want it to go 1 at a time, or maybe 5 at a time, however you want to set it up, okay? We can repeat each step, so we could say print each step twice, so it would go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, etc., the way we have it set up right now. We can set the minimum start point for our counter, so right now it's set to 0. We can set our maximum code, so if we want this to count up to 999 million, we can do that. Or we could also set an end count where it will stop counting. Okay? This is all going to be printed data, so when we input this into our message, again, this will print that counter as it increments. What's going to tell the counter to increment is whatever our print trigger or print signal is. Okay? So each time we get a trigger to print, the counter will increment based off of that. All right? After that, we've got our same font setup options, same as everything else. So again, if you need to customize this one specific field to be a little bit different in appearance than the others, we can do that. Once we're done with setup, click those check boxes and that counter will be input into our template. Okay, another option we have here, I'm actually not going to input it into our template because this is not commonly used, but we do have a serialization option. And actually what this is we can tie this field to an external source or database, okay? So if we need to have a piece of data that is changing with every single print, for example, we could use this feature to do that. And this would be data coming from an external source. If you want more information on that, make sure you also review our user guide. It'll spell that out in more detail. Okay, the next feature we're going to look at is barcodes. If you remember, towards the beginning of this video, we discussed where that barcode selection is, and that's in our generic text field, or you can actually use it in date time as well. We're going to use the text field just as an example. So again, the data we type in for our content is going to actually be the data for the barcode, okay? Again, just some random numbers here, generic numbers 1 through 9. Once we've got our content typed in, we're going to go into our text editor here. And again, we've got this barcode selection option in this field. So if we click this box, it's going to turn our text into a barcode. All right. Once we select this, we're also going to get some additional options here. Major one here is your barcode symbology or barcode type. You'll see there are a lot of different options with laser. Okay. We'll look at a couple different scenarios here. One is we'll just start with, we'll do a UPC code. Okay, so UPC-A. All right, once we've selected our barcode type, we've got our bar height. Okay, so we can select how tall those barcode bars are. 20 millimeters right now, that's pretty tall, you know, relative to the rest of our message. So let's go ahead and shrink that down. So we just click in this field, erase 20, and let's just say we want our bars to be 8 millimeters tall. Okay. After that, an important thing to know here is to control the width of our barcode, we're actually going to work with our font width. Okay, so now that we've selected barcode, our font width is going to select the width of that barcode. All right, so we're going to leave it as it sits for now. We'll back out and input this barcode into the message. We'll come back in and play around with the width to show you how that's going to work. Okay, so we've got our barcode set up. All right, so we hit our checkboxes and you'll see that it inputs a barcode into the template. All right, now if we want to spread this out a little bit, or maybe even compress it a little bit, we can select the barcode. Again, it'll take us right back into the editor. And again, now I'll show you what that font width does to the barcode. So let's say we go from 2 millimeters to 3 millimeters. Hit our checkboxes, you'll see it has stretched that barcode out significantly. Looks a lot better. Okay? Again, maybe our barcode bar height we're not happy with. Again, we can select the barcode, come back in, and modify that height some more. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward to get it to look the way we want. Okay? So really the important thing here is your bar height and your character width to control the size of your barcode. Okay, one thing that's important to point out also with barcodes is that this does require a lot of the system to draw or write these or to mark these, however you want to say it. Okay, the laser has to sit here and fill in every single bar of the barcode. Also, you know, while we have human readable here or other text, it's a lot for the system to do. The only reason I point that out is this is also something that will limit your speed capabilities. Okay, so when you introduce barcodes, especially 2D barcodes into your template, just be aware that that is going to slow you down. One other question we get sometimes with barcodes is how do I get rid of that human readable text? If we remove our font height altogether, so if we just zero it out, click the check boxes twice, that will get rid of our human readable text underneath the barcode. Okay, so really easy to get rid of that. If we need to reintroduce it, obviously we'll just go ahead and re-input character height and it will put that human readable back in. Okay? Okay, before we switch barcode symbology, we are going to talk about 2D barcodes as well, but one thing we want to look at is we have two formatting options for each barcode type. Okay, so we've got UPC-A, again just a standard barcode symbology. One thing with laser is depending on the product that we're marking, we might be making some dark contrast. So in this scenario, we'd be making, the actual dark or black barcode bars. But if we're marking a product and we're actually generating, let's say, white as the contrast, we need to change our barcode type to a reverse format. So right now we're just using UPC-A. You'll see we have an option for RUPC-A. And I'll show you what happens when we select that. We're actually basically doing kind of a negative image of the barcode, if you will. Okay, so we can cover both scenarios depending on the contrast that we're generating on the product. Okay, so now we're going to go to a 2D barcode. So let's go to a data matrix. Okay, and really the only thing I want to show you here is we've got a different option for our 2D barcodes, and that is dot size. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at 1 right now just to give you an example of what that controls. I am going to increase the size of our data matrix barcode quite a bit so we can get a better look at it. With our 2D barcodes, our font height will control the total size of that barcode. So I'm going to change this to 20 millimeters, for example, again, just so we can see this more clearly. Hit our check boxes, and here's our data matrix barcode. Now you'll see right now I had that dot size set to 1, which is quite low. So it's not a very high quality barcode. Depending on the product you're marking, this would actually still likely be scannable. But if we really need to fill this in, we're going to click or select on our barcode, come back into our editor here, and we're going to increase the dot size. So I'm going to make a fairly significant jump here. I'm going to go from 1 to 6. And that's really going to multiply that dot size or dot fill, if you will. So we're going to check back out. Now you'll see what we're more familiar with here with the data matrix barcode. It's filled in much more heavily. Now, again, with barcodes, if we're filling into this degree, it's asking much more of the laser, right? And has to go in and fill in each of these individual dots. So it takes some time. So this, again, will slow down your system or your marking speed capabilities significantly. Okay, so that kind of covers our barcodes, at least gives you a general overview. Obviously, there's a lot you can do with these, a lot of adjustments that can be made to the appearance. I'm actually going to delete this barcode from our message, and that'll just give you guys an idea of how the delete function works since we haven't actually used it yet. So again, the red X is delete. It will ask you to confirm the deletion, click yes, and our element, in this scenario, barcode, is gone. So really straightforward as far as removing something from our template. Okay, the next option we're going to talk about is PLT Import. And what this is for graphics or logos if we need to get one into our message. What we can do is take a logo or graphic, let's say from a PC, we can put it on a flash drive, put that flash drive into the system and import that logo into our message. One thing to point out in advance, the logo needs to be in PLT format. It's not a super commonly used format. It's an HPGL plotter file for lasers, okay? So you're gonna need to have software that can convert your logo to PLT format. That's also something we can help you guys out with if need be, okay? So just make sure, again, in advance, that logo is PLT format. If it's not, the system will not recognize it and won't find it when we go to search for it, okay? So I have a USB flash drive plugged into the laser. Okay, there's two USB ports on the laser. Doesn't matter which one you plug it into. I've already got a PLT file on that flash drive, so now we're going to show you how to locate that file. Okay, so again, PLT Import is going to help us get a logo into the message. So if we click on that, you'll see we have a pop-up here. What we're going to do is right next to open, we've got this little folder, file folder indicator with a green back arrow. If we click on that once, you're going to see we have some new options here. What we're looking for is hard disk, okay? That represents the USB that is plugged into the system. If we don't have a USB plugged in, we will not see this option, okay? So this is our USB. We're just going to click on it, click OK, and any PLT format logos that we have on that flash drive will then appear. So I have a UL logo on that flash drive. We're going to select it, click OK, and that's going to put it into our message. Now you'll see it's a really big logo. Obviously we've got some editing to do here, but really straightforward as far as getting that logo into your template or message, okay? If we want to resize our logo, it's the same exact select option we have for everything else. Okay, you'll see we have a lot of familiar options here. So we can apply a pen number, tells us the object number. We can fill this in. So we have the character fill option that you've seen relative to our bold fonts. And then we would have the fill spacing options, all that good stuff. What I'm going to do here is just decrease the size of this logo significantly. So you'll see we have a width and height option for the logo. And I'm going to shrink this down to, let's say, 12 millimeters by 12 millimeters. Okay, one thing you'll notice is right now with how we imported this logo, it would kind of land smack dab in the center of our template over all of our text. So we're also going to adjust the X and Y coordinates, just to kind of get it out of the way, make life easier for us. So the Y coordinate we can actually leave at 0, right? That's our vertical coordinate. But the X we're going to adjust quite a bit to kind of move this logo over to the right hand side. So I'm going to type in 25 millimeters. Again, this is a little bit of trial and error. We can always, once we do this, see where it lands. If we need to make some fine-tune adjustments, we can use our directional arrows here. But I'm going to go ahead and click our check boxes. You'll see it moved it over to the right-hand side. Okay, so really all I did was adjust that X coordinate to move that out of the way, so we didn't have to do it after inputting it into the message. You'll see we're also kind of zoomed in right now. Again, remember that normal key is your friend. That'll zoom you back out. And you can see that that landed out of the way of all of our other data. One thing to point out with logos, we've mentioned this with barcodes and bold fonts as well. If you input a logo into your template, again, it does limit your speed capabilities. If this was a moving object, for example, we're asking the laser to draw both of these circles and fill in the UL as our product is moving. It's asking a bit more of the laser, so again, just be aware that that will decrease your speed capabilities. Okay, a couple other options we have here as far as items we can input into our template. We have a draw line option and we have a draw circle option. I'm not even going to show you guys me doing this. It's pretty straightforward. To be honest with you, it's fairly uncommonly used, but you do have the ability to draw basic shapes, right, using the line feature or the circle feature. So those options are there and available for you. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the really important elements that we can input into our message template. Now I'm going to show you guys again how to kind of navigate through this display. We're going to look at zooming in and out again really quick, return to normal, and also just kind of scrolling through our display with the keyboard if we had a longer template, let's say. So again, remember you have the zoom options. We can zoom in, inspect our elements more closely. We can zoom out. We can hit normal. Again, that's your friend. It returns you to home. Another thing we can do is use our onboard keyboard to scroll through our message. So I'm going to zoom in, and now you'll see we can't really see our logo right now. Let's say we want to move over and take a look at the logo. If we open up our onboard keyboard, we've got our directional arrows right here. Okay, we can use those arrows to navigate on our home screen through our message. So if we had a lot of content moving off to the right here, we can scroll through and look at it. All right, it's kind of a nice feature here. Again, when we're done, we can close our keyboard, and we can also hit normal if we just want to zoom back out. All right, another cool feature that we have available to us is something called Multiselect. So let's say you've got all this data plugged into your message template, and you realize that the message as a whole is just too large, or maybe it's too small. Okay, what we can do is use this Multiselect feature. So if we click on that, we can actually drag a box over all of our content, and we can resize it as a whole or globally. Okay, so we don't have to go back in and change the font size or logo size for every single element, right? So again, we're going to click Multiselect, so it's abbreviated down here. Okay, so drag anywhere outside or click anywhere outside of all your data. Drag this box over all of the elements that you want to manipulate. Okay, you'll see everything turned red, and if an element's red, that means it's selected. Okay, so we've grabbed everything here. That means we can resize all of our elements. Okay, so you'll see again we have some familiar options here. We can still apply a pen number to all of this. Content just tells us multiple, right? We've got multiple different elements here. What we're really looking at here more than anything is just resizing. So we can adjust the height and the width of all of this, okay? I'm going to deselect the width. I'll let that auto scale on its own, and I'm just going to shrink this down. So let's say I need all of this to be 12 millimeters tall. We can type that in, click our checkbox, and it has shrunk our entire message, okay? So don't forget this feature, Multiselect. Really nice feature to have for when you've got everything put in and you just need to get it all the size that you want. We can still, at any time, even after using Multiselect, we can use our standard select feature and still come back in and select individual elements and adjust them. Okay, a couple other options we will cover really quickly here. One is object list. And this is just kind of repetitive information, but it shows you the order of your elements here. It tells you what type of information or data it is. So we've got our text field that we put in first. Okay, that's our first element. And it just kind of goes down the line. So we've got text, date, time, sequential number or counter, and logo. And it just tells you what that data is. To be honest with you, not something I use very often, but it just kind of gives you a general overview of how our message is composed. The other option here is center. Once we've got everything plugged in, all of our data plugged in, especially if we've moved into our system parameters, we've got our message set up specific to, let's say, our production speed, all that good stuff. If we click center after we do all that, it'll take all those items into consideration, and it will center our message to the best possible location to help with the marking process, or basically make it easier for the laser to mark this message. Okay, a couple of options here we're not going to discuss in this video are our parameters page and our pen parameter page. These are specific to actual setup on our production line. That's where we can type in our production line speed, our trigger mode, things of that nature, along with pen parameters being our power output, draw speed, those other options. Okay, if you want to view how to use those and set them up, you're going to want to watch our video on setting the laser up on a production line. Okay, so that's why we're not discussing those in this video. Really not relevant to just creating a message template. Okay, another option here that we'll just touch on briefly is called users. We actually can't even open this right now. What this is tied to is password protection. So if we do have password protection set up on the laser, we can have different user levels. That's where we could access those levels. Okay, so we'll have a separate video dedicated to setting up password protection on the laser. You'll want to review that to see how this works. Okay, so now that we've got a message created, we're going to talk about message management. So we're going to talk about saving the message, where we can locate our messages, and even exporting to a flash drive, for example. Okay, so if we're happy with our message template, we're going to go ahead and save it. So you see we've got the save icon here. Click save. And what we can do is name our file. So we'll just call this squid. And all we have to do is click OK, and that will automatically save our message to the memory in the laser. Okay? So really straightforward. If we want to build off of this message and save additional message templates, let's say you've got you're going to have a lot of products running very similar messages, maybe just the expiration date will be different for each product. We could quickly modify our date setup, for example, click save, and we could just rename this to another message, and so on and so forth, right? So we can just keep doing that, building off our original template. If at any time we want to access our message database, we've got this open file folder icon. If we click on that, it'll show you all of the messages that are stored on the laser. If we want to delete any of these messages, we can click on it, hold down. You'll see we get a drop down here. Click delete. It'll ask us to confirm that deletion, say yes. That will remove that file from the system. Okay, another option we have here regarding saving our message is we can save this to a flash drive, a USB flash drive, okay? So if we go to save, up in the top left-hand corner next to save is we've got this file folder icon with a little green back arrow. If we click on that 2 times, what we're looking for here is hard disk, okay? So if we have a USB plugged into the laser, we should see hard disk here, okay? That represents the USB. If we click on that and click OK, you'll see we've already got the name of our file, so we can just click OK again, and that has saved our message template to the USB. So now what we could do is take this flash drive with this message template and go to any other laser system that you have We could easily plug this message into each system, okay? If we were going to do that, so let's say we're going to look at bringing a message in from a flash drive or USB flash drive. So let's say we're on a new laser system, we're bringing that message in. We can click the file folder icon here, the open folder, and we're going to go through the same process of locating our USB. So we're going to click this twice. Locate hard disk here. Again, we should have a USB plugged in. There is our squid message. Okay? So we can go ahead and open that up from the USB. And now if we wanted to, we could save it to this new laser. Okay? So we can go back one page. We would select N in flash. Click OK. Select marking file. Click OK. And this takes you to the marking files that are actually stored on the laser. We would click OK one more time. Now we already have this message in this system, so it's asking us if we want to overwrite. Normally you wouldn't see this. It would just save it to the laser storage, okay? So from a message management standpoint, really straightforward for saving to the laser or to a flash drive and bringing that to other systems and importing. Okay, so you'll see we have two USB ports available on the laser right here. When you get these brand new out of the box, both will be sealed off. I've just removed the plug from the top port. To remove these plugs, really straightforward. They just slide right out. You can put it in either one, doesn't matter. All right, that wraps up our video on message creation, editing, and management for our laser systems. If you'd like to see more videos on this product or any of our other products, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also don't hesitate to head over to squidinc.com for even more information on our entire product line. Thank you.